Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining our webinar today. Our focus topic is showing you how to manage risks on your projects in Microsoft Project. My name is Sarah Howard, and I'm with a Microsoft Gold partner called Fragility. We've been implementing Microsoft project and portfolio management solutions for over 16 years now for large enterprises, including everything from engineering, construction, IT, and new product development. People tend to get a hold of us when they can't easily explain what's going on across all of their projects. They don't know what resources are working on what work, and they have a hard time getting consistent reports, metrics, and dashboards to make project-based decisions. At Fragility, we offer services and solutions in 3 core areas, the first being deployment and consulting services, which are Fragility's core business, where we provide professional services for successfully planning and implementing Microsoft Project and Portfolio Management, including Microsoft's Project Online, integrating PPM with line of business applications, and delivering strategic portfolio management solutions to support top-level management planning. We also have a growing business intelligence practice that leverages best-in-class solutions such as Microsoft Power BI. Fragility also offers a set of pre-built software solutions and accelerators based upon 16 years of experience, including a set of Hammerhead products that provide improved access to your cloud PPM data, accelerate access to visual reports and dashboards using Power BI, and connect data between your PPM systems and Teams, Microsoft Planner, and Active Directory to improve visibility, insight, and control over your work, people, and projects. Finally, Fragility provides post-implementation support services, including expert care, which is designed to assist your PMO with gaining on-demand expertise on those solutions supported. We also offer training for your end users and administrators and have an e-learning offering that can improve consistency and adoption for your users of your project management tools. We do have a set of upcoming webinars covering topics ranging from building a solid work breakdown structure to manage your projects to a deep dive session on the Power Platform with Project Online. All webinars will start at 1 p.m. Eastern, so you can register for one or multiple events through the Eventbrite link provided or by searching Eventbrite Fragility in your browser. We hope you can join us for these upcoming sessions, which were designed based upon your feedback over the last 6 months. If you missed the Fragility Virtual Project Conference back in October, you can now watch it online. It's broken into 3 sessions, the first being clients sharing their best practices for deployment. Fragility also speaks on considerations when comparing Project for the Web and Project Online. And we also have a Microsoft expert speaking on the direction of the products. You can search Virtual Project Conference hosted by Fragility in the YouTube search bar to access the recordings. And all videos from this and previous series are available on our best practice playlist on YouTube, which is listed here on this page. We have topics ranging from managing your digital transformation program, using PPM technologies, to integrating PPM with agile and line of business applications. So feel free to subscribe and access this library at any time and share it with your colleagues. So with that, I'm going to hand the presentation over to Rob Hirschman, who is a partner at Fragility. Rob, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Sarah. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you fine.
Great. Well, today's agenda will be focusing on some of the core project risk management concepts. So what is project risk management? Why is it important? And how can you go about actually implementing a risk management procedure on and across your projects? We will then talk about the approach to managing risk using Microsoft Project and Project Online, give you a quick demonstration of some possible software solutions in this area, and finally wrap up with good practices for implementing a risk management solution in your environment and answer any questions. If you do have questions as we go through this, just log them in the IM window or the Q&A manager. We will take them towards the end. Let's talk a little bit about the project management lifecycle. So as you go about planning and managing your projects, you go through an initiation phase, you're going to go through a planning phase, you're going to go through an execution phase, and a closeout phase. And there's different variations depending on the methodology you're using. And if we look at that, there's really a difference in the amount of work you're spending and different types of activities. During the initiate phase, you're spending a lot of time in that blue bar, which is planning, and a lot less in doing, checking, and acting. So you're doing a lot of the upfront planning behind the project, trying to figure out how you're going to be doing it. As we move into planning and executing, that planning bar starts to go down and starts getting replaced with doing, checking, and acting. And as finally we get into closeout, again, we're more in the doing. We're trying to actually wrap up the project, deliver the end deliverables, things like that. The key thing here is as you start thinking about project risk management, it's not something you're going to do at just one stage in your life cycle. You're going to do it throughout. So whether you're doing your planning, execution, your initiation, you're always going to want to think about project risks. Now, why is this important? We have to start out with, what is risk on a project? A risk is any kind of an event that, if it does occur, can cause either a positive or negative impact on a project. And it's kind of interesting. Most people think of risks as being purely negative. It's going to cost me more money, take more time. Well, there can be positive risks. Positive things can happen on a project that can cause you to come under budget or come in early. We want to think about not only the negative, but the positive, and bring those risks up as potential opportunities. So think of risks as both positive and negative. And there are some key attributes to risks. The first, it's going to have some kind of uncertainty. We're not going to know everything about it. And that's why it's a risk in and of the nature of it. It can be positive or negative, as we mentioned, and it can have a cause and a consequence behind it as well. So we're going to have causes, consequences. We're going to start thinking about this. So the practice of risk management is really focused on identifying these risks and coming up with plans to minimize their impact on a project, to figure out if something does occur, what am I going to do to mitigate that so it has the smallest possible impact on my project. A risk, and any risk you have, has a probability that something is going to happen that will occur. And that probability could affect the schedule on your project. It could affect the resources on your project. It could affect the quality of the deliverable or deliverables you are actually ending out with the project. It could affect the performance of the software being developed, the performance of your resources. It can really impact different things. But we also see there are things like business risks or environmental risks that are out there that can impact projects. A great one of those is COVID. Obviously, when COVID hit, that impacted thousands and if not millions of projects that were out there, and caused a lot of us to change course on where we were going from a scope, a schedule, a budget, but also an approach perspective, right? We think about, the business risks that can be out there, not only environmental, but things that can happen to your business or your organization that could impact projects positively or negatively. So when we think about a risk management process, there's a PMBOK or PMI definition of this, and PMI recommends, putting a systematic process for identifying, analyzing, and responding to project risks in place as you're starting to plan for any project you're going to do. Now, the different steps, and there's 5 key steps to doing risk management, as PMI says. You do your risk management planning up front. You do your risk identification throughout the project. You're going to do either or a qualitative and a quantitative risk analysis. Then the risks that are going to occur could potentially occur on your project. We want to do our response planning. What are we going to do if a risk does occur and it becomes an issue? And finally, we're going to do our monitoring controlling, which should be throughout. Now, a lot of folks, and especially PMI, will argue that project management, in the end of the day, really is risk management. It's all about managing the potential things that could happen during the project, mitigating those, communicating those, managing those to successful mitigation. So what is the value of managing risks? So we start to think about the context here before we get into the tools. Well, it gives us first and foremost an opportunity to move from firefighting to actually being a lot more proactive with our decision making. If we identify something's a potential risk, if we bring it up early on in the project, it shows we're thinking ahead. It shows we're thinking of the potential things or problems that could occur, and we're coming up with different mitigation strategies even before that risk potentially actually raises up or occurs. Importantly, it's going to increase your chance of project success. And there's lots of metrics around this, but we bring it up, we manage them, and we mitigate them on an ongoing basis. There's a better chance of our project being successful, which at the end of the day is what project management is all about. It's also potentially going to improve our project schedule performance and our cost performance, because we're managing things that impact the schedule, the cost, the scope, and the quality on that project as risks right from the beginning. It's also going to help any stakeholders and team members, folks that aren't really deep like you are as a project manager into the day-to-day on a project. It's going to help them understand the nature of the project. A lot of stakeholders will tell you, I didn't realize that could be a problem, or it's great that you brought that up. We hadn't even thought of that. It actually adds value to them because they see you're thinking about potential things that could occur. And for team members, they're not thinking a lot of times beyond what they need to do. And if they can see the bigger picture, they can identify their potential things that could occur that impact me and my job, that could impact me having to do more work, me having to work weekends, me having to do things. So if you think about it in the different roles, it has an impact both on your top level stakeholders and the team members that are actually doing the work. It can also help you define right up front the strengths and the weaknesses you have with the project. If you identify a very large list of risks in the beginning, and a lot of those are maybe high cost or high impact that can't be mitigated, that there's some weaknesses in this project right from the beginning. You're spending X amount of the company or the agency's time and money. Is it really worth it? And are you going to get the kind of return you're looking for given these potential risks or potential problems coming up? The reality is, on any project, risks are going to happen. So what you want to do right from the beginning is set the expectations that you're going to be actively managing those right from the start. They're going to be part of every status meeting, every status report, everything you review is going to be through the lens of managing risks. And that really can help you get a lot of the value from what we say is here above and drive towards that project success. So, people will push back. Well, I don't have time for risk management. Why wouldn't you want to do risk management? So, with so much of that benefit we just talked about, why do people overlook it? Why do people just say, let's just go manage the project? Well, a lot of times the first argument we'll hear is, well, we're really too busy. We've got real problems out there. I can't worry about those potential things that might occur. Right? The second thing you'll hear is that, well, what could possibly go wrong? We've done these projects before. We do them on a regular basis. It's the same resources. Don't worry about it. You'll hear that a lot of times. There's also a belief in a lot of different circles that you can't do anything about these risks anyway. Some things are going to occur. And, they're right in some senses. Environmental risks, business risks, you can't plan for those. They're out of your control. But project-related risks, as it relates to things we can actually deal with and manage, they are in our control as project managers. And a lot of times, the attitude in a lot of organizations work with is it's the shoot the project manager. There's this fear that if I bring out risks too early in the process, it means I don't know what I'm doing, or there's a weakness in the project right from the beginning. Well, you'd much rather get that out early, discuss it, manage it, and then move forward. So, you can see the benefits definitely outweigh the negatives here with risk management. But the reality is every project is going to have risks. And just because you deny it doesn't mean it's going away. It just means you're not going to be fully prepared if and when they do occur. Remember, risk in it itself can be negative, but also positive. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's something you're going to be managing, just like you're managing the schedule, the scope, stakeholder expectations. And it's really, really important for the project manager and the team to work together to manage those risks. And really, if we look at it, formalizing a risk management procedure and process is truly the cornerstone of doing good project management. Getting the visibility into risk for the people that are doing the work, the stakeholders, getting access to additional resources and organizational support when those risks, if and when those risks occur, is really important because it happens on every project. So when we look at that process of identification, analysis, response planning, and monitoring on the left, right up front with identification, we're going to identify the project, product, or business risks that are out there. And we're doing this right in the upfront part of the process. And as we go forward, we're going to start doing an analysis. Okay, for each of those risks, what's the likelihood of this to occur? And what are the consequences of these risks occurring from a dollar and time and scope perspective? After we've done our analysis on each of the risks, we're going to start to draw plans to avoid or minimize these, to minimize the impact of these risks, called mitigation strategies or contingency plans. The mitigation is, how do I offset this and make sure it doesn't happen? A contingency has, hey, if it does occur, here's my backup strategy for what I'm going to be doing. And finally, the risk monitoring. This is where we're going to be monitoring risks throughout the whole project. It's probably the most important. If you do nothing else, make sure you can monitor, identify and monitor. The analysis and response planning is really, those are actions you're going to be taking. So how do we do this stuff in Microsoft Project? Well, in Microsoft Project, from a risk identification perspective, we can capture risks on an attached spreadsheet, which is kind of disconnected. We can create a SharePoint list and have a project schedule on a SharePoint list and store the schedule there. And we can track our risks there. Or we can use in Microsoft Project Online what's called a risk list, which is a pre-built component that comes with Project Online. We're going to be able to track all this information. From an analysis perspective, we'll be able to actually review the data and manage the data, both in that risk list in Project Online or a SharePoint list, as well as using a tool like Power BI to do our analytics, trending, and reporting. In terms of our response planning, we want to build that into our risks and our risk strategy. So we want to review and manage that data. And finally, on the monitoring side, we're going to be using Power BI and Project Online together to look within and across projects to manage that risk. We have organizations that manage a portfolio risk, which is made up of program risk, which is made up of an aggregation of project risk. Or you could just do project by project. You have lots of options. And you have to kind of think through what that hierarchy looks like. But there are two kinds of risk you're going to be able to analyze. We're going to focus on one of these today, which is really called qualitative, which is really subjective. You're going in and you're actually capturing the risks. You're rating them high, medium, low. You're taking an educated guess on the potential impact of that risk. You don't know the details, but you're saying, hey, this is small, medium, large. You're kind of t-shirt sizing it. You're ranking it on a scale of kind of 1 to 10, and then you're starting to prioritize these risks as it relates to other ones. If you have 5 or 6 project risks at the kickoff, some of those are very low probability, low impact. You're not going to worry about those. You just kind of keep them on your list and put them away. The potential medium to high probability, high impact ones, yeah, we want to start to think about those. But that's really the first step in our risk analysis process, is doing qualitative risk analysis. That's what we're going to focus on today. A more advanced type of risk analysis is called quantitative risk analysis. And this is really based on statistical analysis of risks related specifically to occurrences within a project schedule. It's used really to determine the probability of something occurring based off historical data and the consequences of a risk. It really is focused on determining the highest risk through this analysis, and it often uses add-on components to a tool like a Microsoft project, like an at-risk or a Risk Plus or a Barbican, a Monte Carlo simulation, essentially where we're actually using add-on tools that are going to do quantitative risk analysis based off specific activities and the probability of that risk occurring. What's the impact specifically on the schedule and the scope? So this is not really what we're focused on today. We're more on the qualitative, but keep in mind there's a secondary kind of risk analysis that's a little more advanced. So let's get into our demonstration. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Microsoft Project, and you'll see I've got a project schedule here we're managing. It's the Health Assessment Reporting Tool project. If you've seen our demos, pretty standard project. And one of the things we're going to do as we're going through our project is we're not going to do anything in the unique schedule to capture the risks, right? We can put notes attached to an activity, we double click, we could add notes here, but that doesn't really give us any qualitative analysis. What we're going to do here is we're going to come up here and we've added a button here for risks. And what risks is going to do is going to take us out to our project online environment where we have a risk repository. This is a standard list that whenever you create a project in Project Online, it creates a matching SharePoint site. One of the lists here is a risk list. The other one is an issue list. And remember, issue is a problem that's occurred. A risk is a potential problem. Two different lists for two different purposes. And you can see here on our risk list for this particular project, we've got 10 different risks that are here. What we can do is we can start to look at them and look at just the active ones or the ones we've closed out already. And we can sort this list in different ways. We can see they're all active right now. And if we're capturing information, we have the ability to create a new risk. What we can do is we can capture a new risk here through a form. This is a basic SharePoint form. We're going to give it a name, potential funding loss due to end of year. We can start to say, okay, who's going to own this risk? So I can say me as a project manager, I may own this, but then I can also assign it to someone who's going to be responsible for managing or mitigating it. That may be someone different than the owner. We're then going to capture certain information. Remember, this is qualitative risk analysis. We're looking at what's the status of the risk. Is it active, postponed, or closed? And what's the category? It could be low, medium, high, 1, 2, or 3. We're going to say this is kind of a high one, so it's a category 1. We're going to have a due date. So for any risk, we have to say, hey, what is the potential date where this risk occurs? And since it's the end of year, we're going to put it right before the end of the year, so right before the holidays. Then we have to capture the probability of this occurring. So what is the probability of this risk happening? And as of right now, we think we have about a 25% probability. What's the impact on a 1 to 9 scale? Well, the impact on the project is pretty big. That's going to be an 8. And what's the potential cost? Is it going to cost $50,000 or $100,000? If we have to mitigate this, how much more money do we need to bring in to keep the funding on the project going? So it could have a $25,000 impact. And one of the important things here is a lot of folks would argue that if you can't quantify a cost on a risk, it's not really a risk. It really depends how you're managing your projects. Well, you're trying to do cost-based risk analysis or not. We would argue that's probably right. You may want to capture some kind of a cost impact, because when you sit down with management, they're going to say, oh, that's great, it's going to push it out 2 weeks. What's the cost impact? That's really what they care about. It's going to take 2 extra weeks, but what's it going to cost me dollar-wise? And do I have that money? So think about using cost as a key indicator here. We may give the risk a description. So Jim, the CFO, has shared funding may be reduced. Then we can come up with what we call a mitigation plan. How are we going to mitigate this? Maybe I'm going to talk to talk to our division head, Mike T, to see if he has offset funding. Go out as a project manager, and to mitigate this, I may go talk to somebody else to say, hey, I know you've got end of year money. I know it's your project. Can we get some additional funding here just in case? A contingency, and this is where, and it explains here, this is the fallback plan. If the risk occurs, we're going to need, if funding ends and no money from Mike, need to put, reduce contract resources. Which may delay things. Go talk to the developer resource manager about other available internal devs. So what we can start doing is adding a contingency plan. So I'm thinking through, what am I going to do if this risk does occur? How can I have a contingency plan around that? A trigger description, funding in out December 23rd. Now I'm saying that's the trigger description if this occurs, and it may be driven by a trigger, maybe a date. It may be exposure over a certain threshold. Maybe the task goes too long. The task isn't completed. In this case, we're just going to give it a date, and then we can save that risk back to our library. So now we've got all the risks on a project. We're capturing these, we're assigning them, we're starting to look at them, and we can do status, low to high, high to low. But what project's going to do, it's actually going to calculate an exposure. And it's doing the probability and the impact, and it's doing a calculation to say, okay, our highest exposure risk right now is this, we may lose some funding in December, 6.4, and that's a probability of 8 times an impact. And then we figure in the cost here. So now we can, as a project manager, start to list these, but also have them show up in our status reports. So we're going through these risks, and as we mitigate them, we're actually going to close them out. So this is a good strategy for capturing these risks. And again, this is built into your project online system that you can start using to track the risks. Now, team members can actually go out and start looking at these. So there's some visibility right on the home page of that SharePoint site. So if I go to the home page for this project, this is the SharePoint site, and you'll see the list of risks is here. And if I'm a team member and I just got assigned this risk or a different risk, what I can do, which is really a nice feature in the technology, I can go in and say, you know what? I want to follow this, or I want to be alerted every time someone changes something on this risk. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to subscribe to this. I'm going to say, send me a text message or send me an email, and then tell me when anything changes, when somebody else changes it, or, just tell me when anything associated with me or anything opens and closes on this project. I'm really, really curious, and send it immediately. And so this is actually going to create alerts for individuals that are stakeholders of those risks. So maybe an executive says, let me know, tell me when something happens on that. You may want to manage that as a PM and have you notified of it, or you may just want to say, why don't I subscribe you right now? You know exactly what's going on. And you'll see just from that, I got an email, it went ding, and now I'm getting emails in my inbox about this. This is a really great way to interact with risks in a way that's very proactive, not reactive, where we're capturing them, triaging them. And then as we go forward, we're going to start capturing these on our status reports. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to go into one of our status reports. And this is a Power BI dashboard that's showing us a portfolio level, but let's go down to a program level. So let's say we've got a program going on, and this is our digital transformation program. And you can see one of the quadrants we've built into our digital transformation program for Voxer here is active risks on the right. So I can see within the transformation program, I have 15 projects, and here is a listing of all those projects and how they're doing. And then I've got active risks. So what I can do is I can click on the ones with active risks, and it's just going to show me now the projects that have active risks within them. Now, if I wanted to get into that and actually have a program list report, this is a pre-built set of report templates that we have. This is going to show us at a program level for the digital transformation program, there are 17 risks on this program. We can start to see they're all active right now, and we can see a risk grid or an impact grid that shows us we've got 5 here that are top right red, which means medium to high probability, medium to high impact. So I may want to focus on those. And simply by clicking down here, what I can do is I can say, okay, show me these category 3 and these category 2 risks, which fall into that category. And now I can start to see, here are the risks that are going on across my program. So as a director or a program manager, I know there's 15 projects going on. I want to surface what the big potential problems are going to be. And if I just want to focus on what the biggest problem we have is, well, our potential problem, I click on the category red one, and now I can see there's a $100,000 risk that has a high probability of occurring, has a very high impact. This is the point where I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to make a phone call. If I didn't know about this before a status meeting, I now know about it. And that has a huge impact on my portfolio because I've got a $500,000 budget. This could cost me $100,000 more. So I want to see who's mitigating this. What's the mitigation strategy? Do we have a backup? Do we have a contingency plan? This doesn't become an issue and cost me more money. And that's how we can proactively use risk management to bubble this information up to a program level. We start at the portfolio. Now we've got a program of risks. But from there, we may go in and say, you know what, I really want to focus on one project that's got a problem. So we've got this, again, the health assessment project. We're going to click on that, and we can see there are still risks. In fact, there are 7 risks on that project, 6 of them total, and then 3 are highlighted. So what I can do from here is actually click on this and drill through to this project using Power BI. Because all of my data, my qualitative risk information is stored in Power BI. Now I have this status report for this project. You can see I've got 5, 8, 10 active risks here. What I want to go to is go to the project risk report. And this is where I can see on this project, I've got 10 active risks. And I'm really, again, focused on the top right here. The stuff in the bottom left, not as concerned about. So what I do is I just click on the red, maybe the category 2 ones here. By doing that, now I've just narrowed it down to my high probability, high impact risks. You can see them there. Now I know there's 4 risks that are being managed on this project, who they're assigned to. I know who the project manager is, and I may want to have a discussion about these 2 big ones. I've got one at 50,000 and one 100,000. Again, that funding source is going away at the end of the year. That's a problem. And as a manager, I want more information about it. It takes me right into that. So using this set of technologies, we can take it from a top level down to a detailed level. We can run our status meetings and status reports and do our risk management completely integrated with our project status reporting without having people kludge information together or get SharePoint lists or go in and build stuff custom on different kinds of Excel spreadsheets. And this is really a great strategy for doing active risk management on your projects. It relies on tools that are already in place today, Microsoft Project and Project Online and SharePoint Online, and leveraging Power BI for dashboards and reports. So hopefully that gave you a feeling for some of the capabilities or possibilities with doing active risk management on your projects. You know, what are some good practices or procedures for doing this if you're thinking about becoming more proactive with your risks beyond just starting to do it? Well, if you're going to deploy a technology solution, make sure it aligns with what you're trying to accomplish. And what that means is if you're just trying to get a big list of all your risks, get a big list of all your risks and start with that. If what you're trying to do is score your risks and prioritize them and triage them, that's a different level of detail. There's different work involved, and you're going to have to set up the system in a different way to assume that. Figure out what's the problem you're trying to solve, and is it very basic? Is it more advanced? Are you trying to do real program level risk? What that business problem is going to determine the technology solution and approach you use. What you want to do is to start assessing and identifying risk on every project you have and decide whether or not it's more or less probable. What that means is just start doing it. Capture risks, start to triage them. If your organization doesn't have an active risk management procedure and process in place, talk to whoever's running project management or the PMO and say, hey, I think this is probably a really good idea. You know, I think we have some technology to do this, but importantly, we can be more successful in our projects if we start doing it. And, you know, it being December, it's a great time of the year to start reviewing how you did on projects last year, planning for projects for the next year, and start to do that. And if risk management can help you be more successful, then give it a shot. Before you start your project, determine the level of tracking of risks you want to do. Don't get halfway through a project and start doing risk management because expectations have already been set with your stakeholders and you're going to drop something new on them. Before the project, even in the pre-kickoff or the kickoff meeting, go through your status reporting format. Go through how you're going to be tracking risks, how often you're going to be communicating those, and how you're going to be reporting those, and what you're looking for from your stakeholders and your team members in order to properly manage risks across your projects. That can help you be a lot more successful at expectation setting. And then also think about how do you want to report and communicate these risks? You know, if your current process is you produce a PDF, you send it around, you sit in a meeting and review it, maybe that's the right approach. How do you ingrain risk management in that and make it a discussion point more than just a list that's on the status report? But you really want to talk about, do I want people going in and doing work for themselves and go into a Power BI dashboard to self-search for that stuff and have self-service, or is that risky in and of itself that executives may dig into data that you don't necessarily need them or want them having right now? So really think about how you want to communicate and report, and also come up with a strategy, you know, for tracking your risks. You know, risks are going to change over time. You know, what is the impact of that, and assess what the impact or the effect is once a risk changes. And remember, this is something you should do at every step in your process. It should be covered in your management progress and your management review meetings and your status meetings. So risk management should really be embedded in how you do business from a project management perspective. And then if you can, try to standardize on this. Start with a couple of projects, maybe your bigger ones, where risk is going to have more an impact. Don't do it on the small ones. Do it on a major program where risk management makes sense and have all the project managers managing projects on that program have a consistent way to manage risks, you'll see if that's done successfully, that'll roll down to other projects. Your PMO or program office will say, this is really great. We need to institute this on all our projects, or people aren't really good at this. We need to train people on how to do active risk management. And organizations do provide training on risk management processes, and then you can integrate some of the technology we showed you today. So we wanted to show you, what risk management is, how you can proactively do it, and some of the technologies. At this point, we'll open the floor to any questions. Sarah?
Thanks, Rob. Like Rob said, if you have any questions, feel free to type them into the chat box where we will read them aloud. Thank you. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to type them into the chat box where we can read them aloud. Thank you. Well, hopefully today's session gave you some ideas as to how the Microsoft technology can help support your needs for managing risks on projects. If you're interested in digging deeper to determine how a solution could be designed to meet your needs, or if you're already using a solution and looking for ways to drive improvements in the system and related processes, feel free to reach out. We can assist with helping you understand which approach is the best fit, and we'll set up time to ask questions and provide you with guidance and an understanding of the resources required and make the right technology deployment and training recommendations. So my contact information is listed here, so feel free to reach out. And we thank you again for joining our webinar today. Again, reach out if you have any questions or specific training or implementation requirements you might have. I'm Sarah Howard with Fragility, and we will see you at our next event. Thank you.